hinges, guns, penknives, cartridges, pens, mines, needles, and many other things of the same kind. And ever since the beings of this contemporary community started inventing these practical objects, the ordinary existence of the three-brained beings of your planet has been, just as our dear Mullah Nasruddin says, not life, but free jam. The beings of that contemporary community have been the benefactors of the other contemporary beings of your planet, offering them, as they say there, philanthropic aid, especially as regards their first being duty, namely, the duty of carrying out from time to time the process of reciprocal destruction. Thanks to them, the discharge of that being duty of theirs has gradually become, for your contemporary favorites, the merest trifle. In the absence of those inventions, it used to be exceedingly arduous for these poor favorites of yours to fulfill that being duty, because they were formerly forced to spend a good deal of sweat for it. But, thanks to the adaptations of every kind invented by those contemporary beings, it is now, as again our esteemed Mullah Nasruddin says, just roses, roses. The contemporary beings now scarcely need to make any effort whatsoever in order to destroy completely the existence of beings like themselves. Sometimes, sitting quietly in what they call their smoking rooms, they can destroy, just as a pastime, as it were, tens and sometimes even hundreds of others like themselves. I might as well now, I think, tell you a little also about the still existing direct descendants of the beings of the mentioned Greek-Roman civilization. The descendants of the beings of the once great and powerful community Greece there still continue to exist, and also to have their own independent community. But for the other independent communities there, they have at the present time scarcely any significance whatever. They already no longer do as their ancestors did there, who were supreme specialists in cooking up all kinds of fantastic sciences. For if a contemporary Greek cooked up a new science, the beings of the other communities of the present time would not pay it the smallest attention. And they would pay no attention to it chiefly because that community has not at the present time enough of what are called guns and ships to be for the other contemporary beings there what is called an authority. But though the descendants of the former great Greeks, namely the Greeks of the present time, have lost the trick of being what is called an imagined authority for other three-brained beings there, they have now perfectly adapted themselves there on almost all the continents and islands to keeping what are called shops, where without any haste, slowly and gently, they trade in what are called sponges, halva, rahat lokum, Turkish delight, etc., and sometimes Persian dried fruit, never forgetting the dried fish called kefal. And as for the descendants of the famous Romans, although they too continue to arise and exist, they no longer even bear the name of their ancestors, though they still call the chief place of their community by the name Rome. The contemporary beings of the community formed by the descendants of those former shepherds, afterwards the great Romans, are called by the other beings there Italians. Except for that specific being impulse, which the ancient Roman beings were the first on that planet to crystallize in their presences, and which subsequently spread gradually to all the other three-brained beings of that planet, scarcely anything else had passed by inheritance from their ancestors to these beings called Italians. The beings of that contemporary community, Italy, exists at the present time very quietly and peacefully, doing nothing more than unostentatiously inventing ever new forms of their harmless and very innocent what is called macaroni. Nevertheless, there had passed to certain beings of that contemporary Italy by heredity from their ancestors one special and very peculiar property called giving pleasure to others. Only they manifest this inherited need, that is to say, this giving pleasure, not towards beings there like themselves, but to beings of other forms. It must in fairness be stated that the said special property passed to beings of various parts of contemporary Italy, not from the great Romans alone. This inherited property became more naturalized by their ancestors of considerably later epochs, namely at the time when they began spreading, among other beings, both of their own community and of neighboring weaker communities, the doctrines already changed for their egoistic purposes of a certain genuine sacred messenger from above. At the present time, the beings of various parts of contemporary Italy actualize this property of giving pleasure to others in the following way. The existence of the quadruped being called sheep and goats, whose planetary bodies they also use for their first food, they do not destroy all at once, but in order to give this pleasure, they do it slowly and gently over a period of many days. That is to say, one day they take off one leg, then a few days later a second leg, and so on, for as long as the sheep or goat still breathes. And the sheep and goats can breathe without the said parts of their common presence for a very long time, because in the main functions of the taking in of cosmic substances for the possibility of existing, these parts do not participate, though they do participate in the functions which actualize those impulses giving self-sensations. After what I have already said, there seems no need to say any more about the descendants of those Romans who were once so menacing and so great for the other communities there. Now, let us talk about the particularly maleficent invention of the ancient Greeks, which is being actualized in practice at the present time by the beings of the contemporary community there called England, and which invention they call sport. Not only have the beings of the contemporary community England, namely those beings who chiefly actualize during the process of their ordinary existence this particularly maleficent invention of the ancient Greeks, added, thanks to its maleficent consequences, one more surefire factor for shortening the duration of their existence, already trifling enough without that, but also experiencing in their turn, at the present time, the greatness of their community. They are, in consequence, authorities for the other three-brained beings there, and furthermore, because they have made the actualizing of the invention in practice their ideal, and its spreading their aim, they at the present time by every possible means strongly infect the beings of all other large and small communities of that ill-fated planet with that invention of theirs. The basis for that very serious misconception there was the disappearance from the common presence of those favorites of yours of the possibility of the crystallization in them of those factors which actualize logical mentation in three-brained beings. And in consequence of the absence in them of this logical mentation, all of them, almost without exception,